So we will move forward with item number 3, Senate Bill 407. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Today I'm presenting Senate Bill 407 to strengthen protections for some of our most vulnerable youth by ensuring that they aren't placed in hostile homes. SB 407 will strengthen the resource family approval process by requiring explicit consideration of LGBTQ youth in home and environmental assessments, by creating standard documentation by the Department of Social Services for these assessments to include the needs of LGBTQ youth, by reviewing county-approved resource families to evaluate if they are meeting the needs of LGBTQ youth, and ensuring that resource families have the necessary skills, knowledge, and abilities to be parents to LGBTQ youth, and clarifying existing law that conduct that poses risk to the health and safety of LGBTQ youth is a valid reason for denial of a resource family. According to the California Child Welfare Indicators Project, there are about 53,000 foster youth in California. LGBTQ foster youth are about 30%. So approximately 1 in 3 foster kids in California. Identifies as LGBTQ. So this is not a tiny percentage. This is like if you are going to be a foster parent, there is a non-tiny chance, there's a reasonable chance that you will have an LGBTQ kid. And we want to make sure that we aren't placing these kids in the homes where there's hostility towards them. That's not in the interest of the kids. It's not in the interest of the foster parents. We know that kids who have parental support are dramatically more likely to succeed and dramatically less likely to attempt suicide. California has made great strides around the needs of all foster youth, a lot of work to do, including the needs of LGBTQ foster youth, but there's more work ahead. And we need to make sure that we are creating the healthiest settings possible for these kids. So I respectfully ask for an aye vote. And with me today to testify is Jill Jacobs, the Executive Director of Family Builders, as well as Craig Pulsifer, the Legislative Director for Equality California, one of our sponsors. And we also, for technical assistance, if questions arise, have Tyler Rindy with the Alliance for Child and Family Services, also a sponsor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So thank you. We'll hear from you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I am Jill Jacobs, the CEO of Family Builders, a foster care, adoption, permanency, and LGBT advocacy organization. I also serve as a board member of the California Alliance of Child and Family Services, 160 statewide nonprofit community-based organizations that provide services to children, youth, and families in foster care. We're also one of the co-sponsors of this bill. As Senator Wiener said, LGBTQ plus youth are disproportionately represented in the foster care system. LGBTQ youth also suffer abuse in the foster care system at twice the rate of non-LGBT young people. Abuse in foster care comes from caregivers, paid staff, and peers. LGBT youth often end up in foster care because they came out, were found out, or were kicked out of their family. A really important number to know is that 45% of LGBT young people seriously considered suicide in the last year. More than half of transgender and non-binary youth considered suicide. California has enacted legislation to prevent discrimination, including the Foster Care Bill of Rights. However, this protection is not really translated when approving resource families by foster family agencies and counties. SB 407 will strengthen and clarify the existing resource family approval process to prevent discrimination that's still occurring. To become a resource parent, there's a set of criteria that one must meet. This includes the ability to demonstrate an understanding of the unique needs of LGBTQ youth and the capacity and willingness to meet those needs. If the prospective caregiver cannot meet those needs, they should not be approved. We don't know which youth are going to be gay or non-binary or which children will come out. Therefore, we must ensure that all caregivers are able to meet the needs of all children, which SB 407 will do. An example of the harm that happens is a young man that we worked with when he was in his early 20s had been placed in foster care in a foster home when he was 4 years old. And he didn't remember his life prior to that. So the only parents he ever knew were his foster parents. He called them mom and dad. It was the only family he'd ever known. And when he turned 14, he came out to them as gay. The day after he came out, he was removed from their home. And he spent the rest of his years until his 20s and probably significantly after that, bouncing around from different institutions and different homes. Youth who perceive parental support regarding their gender identity are 93% less likely to attempt suicide. We believe this bill will actually save lives. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Move on to our next witness, please.
All right, now what I'm going to do is try to position the rubber hand so it looks like it's your own. Okay, could you imagine that being your own hand, kinda?
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to stroke your fingers simultaneously, the rubber finger and your real finger, and hopefully this will convince you that the rubber hand is your own, that your brain will actually adopt this hand.
In the illusion, simply watching the rubber hand being stroked at the same time as the
It's
real
happening again.
hand is enough
Little
to
bit.
trick the brain into adopting it as its own.
We like weird. And slowly but surely, you should feel that the hand you're looking at is actually part of your body.
Feels like you're touching my hand with that one.
Right, so it feels like this is your hand that I'm
Yes.
touching, right?
Yes.
You okay?
Yeah.
Good. Try that at home with your kids. Yeah. The rubber hand illusion is a wonderful example of how multisensory perception can influence how we perceive our own body. I mean, that's how deep multisensory perception runs. When you hold your hand out, it's generally thought that you know it's there because of the information you're getting from your muscles and your tendons and that sort of thing. But what the rubber hand illusion does is show how that can be overridden by visual information.
Good afternoon, Craig Polster on behalf of Equality California, proud co-sponsor of SB 407. Chair and members, I'm sure we can all agree that no child should ever be placed in a home where they might reasonably be expected to experience discrimination or violence. But that's exactly what's happening, and it's happening to some of the most vulnerable youth in the foster care system. We know that LGBTQ youth are overrepresented in foster care, and they are more likely to experience discrimination and violence than their peers. We also know that sexual orientation and gender identity evolve over time, and families caring for any foster youth in this state should be prepared for that reality. Over the past decade, Equality California has sponsored numerous bills to make sure that resource families have the training and support they need to support LGBTQ youth. And all resource families are currently required to receive training on sexual orientation and gender identity. But quite frankly, it's not enough. And LGBTQ foster youth are being re-traumatized every time they are placed in a home that is not accepting or affirming of their identity. California can and must do more to strengthen the resource family approval process on the front end to better prevent discrimination of these vulnerable youth. SB 407 will strengthen the resource family approval process and make sure that all resource families in the state have an understanding of the unique needs of these youth and that they're willing to seek out any and all available resources to help meet those needs. It will also require explicit consideration of LGBTQ youth in home and environmental assessments and require the state to ensure that county-approved families are upholding the rights of not only LGBTQ youth, but all foster youth regardless of their background. The bill is in no way intended to decrease the already limited supply of potential resource families, but it is the policy of the state that LGBTQ youth have the right to have caregivers who will understand and respect them, and California must do everything it can to follow through on that promise and ensure that a resource family approval process is as strong as possible. I respectfully urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Any members of the public wishing to express support for this bill, please approach the microphone. State your name, affiliation, and position only. All right. Seeing none, we'll now move on to lead witnesses in opposition. Any members of the public wishing to express opposition for this bill, please approach the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Domingo, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Catholic Conference. I represent the 12 Catholic dioceses of California, including 12 million Catholics in parishes and ministries throughout the state. I would like to commend Senator Wiener for his bill seeking to safeguard the health and well-being of all children in the child welfare system, as well as eliminate discrimination and harassment for children. At the same time, I respectfully oppose SB 407 as currently written. About 10 years ago, when I was working for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, I began working on the issue of foster care. I was invited by leaders of other local Christian churches to find out what they were doing to recruit and maintain foster or resource families in their churches. I was amazed at the level of commitment from many of these small faith communities to provide loving homes to the children in the child welfare system in LA County, which cares for more children than any other place in the country. One of the first meetings I attended with the LA County Department of Children and Family Services was at a big downtown concrete LA office building. I got off the elevator expecting to find an office full of cubicles and desks, and instead what I saw broke my heart. It was an office room full of cribs, wall to wall. The workstations had been pushed aside and the space was made to house infants in this sterile office building. Staff members not accustomed to caring for infants all day were being asked to take on that role because there was no one else. It was explained to me that LA County was in a crisis and every attempt was being made to find foster families, but these tiny infants were relegated to an office building because none could be found. That experience has never left me. And at that time, I made a commitment that I would personally begin a process of recruiting foster families from within our Catholic parishes and schools throughout California and the nation. Since then, I've helped Catholic communities become further engaged in the process of identifying and supporting loving families to care for youth in need of homes and love and families. I'm here today because I have many questions about SB 407. I commend the author and the sponsors for wishing to create pathways to provide children with loving and safe homes. No one supports families that harass or discriminate against any youth placed in their homes. At the same time, it is appropriate that loving families may question the appropriateness of certain services. This may come from their faith perspective. It may be a conscience decision based on their understanding of the child and their particular needs, or it could simply be questioning the medical soundness of certain gender-affirming care. I question the assertion that every family must demonstrate the capacity and willingness to meet the needs of LGBTQ+ and gender-expansive youth, including the right to have access to all available services in order to meet the requirement for a loving resource family in California. I am here as a person of faith representing people of faith who are or wish to be resource families for youth in California. For me and for others, religious faith is not a purely emotional or intellectual exercise. It's a lived experience of bringing my faith into every aspect of my life. Foundational for us is the call to love God and to love our neighbor, which in this case means loving and recognizing the needs of foster youth. It is this religious impulse that both motivates people of faith to engage in child welfare work and informs the way in which we carry it out. Rather than reducing the number of resource families in California, I propose that we ought to be increasing the number so that the likelihood of a child finding the best family for them is far greater. I believe that we can work together to come to a solution in which people of faith with deeply held beliefs about the nature of the human person and sexual integrity can be and can remain excellent resource families to children in California. Why can't there be many kinds of loving families, loving children, and providing safe, protective homes? Making the requirement.
Will you please wrap up your
Yes,
thoughts?
please.
Thank you.
So I welcome an opportunity to work with the author or the bill's author and sponsors to find a solution that allows for more, not fewer, excellent families to help these youth in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to express opposition, please state your name, affiliation, and position only.
I'll try to speak loudly. I have neuropathy.
Okay.
My name is Vern Tyler. I represent Hosanna Pathways. My wife and I, starting in 1975, and for roughly 37 years, have parented over 800 foster children personally. So we've experienced a lot of children, a lot of situations, a lot of circumstances. While we were foster parenting for Alameda County, we were rather disappointed to see that the very community, that the ethos of the community, the faith-based community, were not coming forward and providing foster care for children. So we thought, okay, we'll start a foster family agency that is faith-based. And we'll go out to the churches, synagogues, and so on, and recruit families that have a faith-based ethic. We did very well. We served 10 Bay Area counties, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. So I have personally trained hundreds and hundreds of foster families. And even today, our primary focus is training parents to either keep their children out of the system, or if they have their children in the system, giving them the parenting skills to get them out. So we're very, very oriented towards the faith community and the children that go through the trauma. One of the things that we have run into, though, and we did not renew our license in 2015 because of some of the state regulations. We were just finding that the opposition, the time, the dollars, that was time that's spent to having to try to defend and support our families was rather overwhelming. And I've got to sadly say, Hosanna became licensed in 1985, and one of our purposes, of course, was to extend to get good, recruit good and train good foster families, resource families. But the opposition, the resistance that we had, we were just spending such a disproportionate amount of time having to defend families because of their values. Because
Can I have you wrap up now?
I'm sorry?
Can you please wrap up your testimony?
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you.
Will you please finish up your testimony?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There's two things. Number one, I want to be specific in terms of supporting the issue in terms of its education.
Okay.
Everybody needs to be educated. And I think the counties are doing an excellent job with regard to that and this issue. But where I'm in opposition is why foster parents and why Judy and I have basically withdrawn is we're tired of fighting the system. When government comes into my home and dictates to me how I'm going to raise my family and the environment and the values that I have to establish, it's no wonder we are, as a nation, as a state, as a community, where we are today.
Thank you
It's
for coming
government
to talk to us
intrusion. I
today.
think that's where this bill,
Thank
that's
you.
the only reason I'm in opposition.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
God
you and
those who
Judy.
have the compassion for these
Okay.
kids.
We're going to open up the microphone. Anybody else, members of the public wishing to express opposition, your name, affiliation, and position only, please.
Yes, Greg Burr with the California Family Council in opposition.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We will now move on to witnesses waiting to testify via the teleconference service. Moderator, will you please prompt individuals waiting to testify in support or opposition of Senate Bill 407? We're ready to begin.
Yes, to provide comments in support or opposition for SB 407, please press 1 then 0 at this time. And we'll go to line 38. Please go ahead, 38.
Hi, Mary Creasy on behalf of the Children's Partnership in support.
Thank you.
Line 132.
Chair and members, thank you so much to the author for presenting this bill, Michelle Turan-Woolfork with the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, in strong support.
Thank you.
Line 145.
Good afternoon. Tiffany Fan on behalf of California Court Appointed Special Advocate Association, or CASA, in support of SB 407. Thank you.
Thank you.
Line 99.
Hello, my name is Courtney Thorpe. I'm a social worker in Stanislaus County and member of the National Association of Social Workers California chapter, in very strong support of this bill.
Thank you.
Line 148.
Good afternoon. Rebecca Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter, in support.
Thank you.
Line 149.
Good afternoon. This is Jenna Spidler with Children's Law Center of California, in support.
Thank you.
Line 48.
Good afternoon. Espo Choice, social work student, in strong support.
Thank you.
Line 83.
Good afternoon, Edison Contreras, social work student in strong support.
Thank you.
Line 142.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priscilla Amau, California State University, Monterey Bay, and Alianza for Youth Justice, in support of SB 407. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, no further comments in queue at this time.
Thank you so much, moderator. We'll now bring the discussion back to the members. Any members? Senator Ochoa.
Hello. Thank you, Senator Wiener, for bringing this measure forward. I think ultimately we all want the proper homes, making sure that we match each child with the proper home. And I don't know the process, so I'm not sure if there's anybody here that understands or knows how the children are matched with their families. But are there categories where resource families can request toddlers or children of a certain age, teenagers, or even LGBTQ youth, in order to match them best with families that can meet the needs of those particular groups of children?
My understanding is yes. The answer is yes. Of course, when you have a foster child who comes into a home, you may not know if that child is LGBTQ for that specific category, because child may not have come out yet, especially if they're younger. But the answer is yes, but perhaps an expert can elucidate.
I think you just did, Senator. Yes, foster parents can always make a decision about any individual child and can all, emergency foster care, long-term foster care, toddlers, teenagers, whatever they want. But as the senator said, and we need to stress, we don't know. We don't know the 3-year-old is going to come out. We don't know the 16-year-old is going to come out. And so that's why with 30% of the potential population being LGBT, we have to make sure that all families can be affirming. Thank you.
So the intent is, if I may, through the chair, just want to make sure that I finish my train of thought, because it really, we shouldn't have a system where we're going to incentivize different cultural backgrounds in order to be able to meet the needs of each child, because children have different needs. But do you feel that we have the capacity within this bill to make sure that we accommodate children to best, in the category of applying to be a foster parent, you can specify toddler, children, LGBTQ families, right? Is that correct? I just want to make sure that I understand that. Okay. And the training, you have basic training for all resource families that includes LGBTQ training, but it doesn't compel families to take, because you want to match the right child, right? With the family that's going to be able to best meet. And I would want any child to be with a family that knows and has the ability to meet the needs of that particular child, whether it's age or identity. So this bill doesn't necessarily compel families to take a child that they don't have the capacity to meet that child's need. Per se, in this case, LGBTQ. There wouldn't be families who cannot meet those needs matched with that particular child.
Right. That is true, except to be clear, in an ideal world, we would know everything. If we had a perfect world, we would know everything about every child, everything about every family, and it would be like you'd have perfect matches. In the world we live in, that's not always the case, particularly here, because we don't, always know, and for younger kids, may not know at all. And so that's why we have the screening process for foster parents, where we have a whole variety of things that we screen for to make sure that we don't create dangerous, volatile, bad situation, and that we don't exacerbate the problem we have right now, where foster kids are so much more likely to become homeless or in the criminal justice system than other kids. And so the more we can do to try to screen and make sure that kids are going to be in safe homes, the better it's going to be. So with LGBTQ kids, two things. This is a large chunk of the foster youth population, right? It's almost just like a few kids. So we're just trying to make sure that they're in the right homes, and it's really straightforward. It's a huge number of these kids. But the second thing is there are so many kids we don't know. So they're being placed in a home when they're 1 or 3 or 7 or 10 or 12 or whatever, and we have no idea if they're LGBTQ. And at some point they come out, and that if that parent is hostile, that's a huge problem. And I want to be clear in terms of the opposition. No, this isn't about people's opinions. People can have whatever opinion they want. This is about how you are going to raise a child and treat that child. So if you are going to, if you have your own opinions about LGBTQ people, that means that you can have those opinions. But if that means you're going to try to put your child in conversion therapy, and by the way, the California Catholic Conference has opposed every effort to get rid of conversion therapy in California, which is psychological torture. So we want to make sure that you are not putting kids in the homes where they are literally potentially going to have violence committed against them or torture. That's all this is. It's a screen. And so
let me expand a little bit just so I understand. And I get the overall goal that you're trying to achieve, and I am completely in agreement with you on that front. But I also want to make sure that this bill will not discriminate against families who don't have the capacity to meet the needs of LGBTQ kids from coming and becoming a resource, or will it actually discriminate against them being a part, because potentially they could be the type of parents, and we don't know, right? We don't know, maybe those parents eventually maybe eventually their hearts changes, and they decide that they want to have further understanding and training or whatever it may be. I don't know. I want to make sure that we know that this bill does not discriminate against people who don't have the capacity to be able to meet those needs from entering the system.
What do you mean by the capacity?
Just the capacity of meeting the needs of LGBTQ kids in wherever those children are. Because I get the point that you have, that I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that we're not discriminating against people who don't have the ability to meet those needs.
So to be clear, existing law already bans discrimination.
Sure.
And requires that they receive information and training. This bill seeks to assure that has actually sunk in. So we're not. They're already. They already can't discriminate. We're simply strengthening that because the implementation is not working that well right now, and so we're trying. That's why we are strengthening it. But the prohibition on discrimination already exists under California law.
And I get that. I guess I'm trying to see how that's going to work. I'm trying to understand how that's going to work with families who, because you can learn, you can be given the classes and know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're comfortable or have the ability to enact them. We can teach teachers how to be teachers, but some of them will be good teachers and some of them will not be good teachers. And we want the good teachers to be able to meet the needs of those particular kids that need that specific training, right? Same thing with the parents. We can teach all these parents and have them have their classes, but some will be better apt to enact those understandings, and some may not feel as comfortable or not be able to have the ability to do that. So I just want to make sure that when we're matching the kids, one, we have them with parents who have mastered the ability to enact those lessons learned from the training, and those that don't feel comfortable or don't have the capacity to do that are matched with children who meet their ability to meet those kids. And I think we have room to have a variety of households with a variety of abilities to meet these children's needs. And I want to make sure that we're moving towards that end and not disincentivizing people from entering the system and becoming foster parents. I'm trying to be as delicate as I can. I hope that makes sense.
I'm going to ask to make sure that your question was answered, because I want to make sure we can move forward to Senator Menjivar, but I don't want to take away from your thought here. But I want to make sure your question
and I
is
just
out
want to
and
make
answered.
sure that do I
think
understand where I'm coming from?
It's always case by case, right? And so if you have someone wants to be a foster parent who's like, okay, I because of my background and my beliefs, I'm trying to learn, but I need to figure it out. But I really want, but they're going to do everything they can to be good parents to these kids and not torture them, and not push them to suicide, just to be blunt. That's one thing. If you have parents who are like, well, I believe in conversion therapy, and I think that any LGBTQ kid needs to go into conversion therapy to get on the.
We shouldn't have that match.
Right. Well, that's one of the extreme examples, but that is real. And so I think that's why there's a spectrum, and that's why we have a system that evaluates each family. So if that helps.
So once again, the question is, will this bill be allowed to accommodate those parents that have not mastered or don't have the capacity or even the ability to meet these children and can meet the other children's needs?
They will have to, in addition to having the training, have to affirmatively assure that they have the ability to raise an LGBTQ child, because there is a 1 in 3 chance that the child being placed in their home is LGBTQ, and so we will need to be assured that they have that ability, because otherwise a kid could get placed in their home, the kid comes out, and then the parent, and it just goes south, and that is so traumatic for that kid, in addition to being a bad situation for the parent.
Okay, so then follow-up question. Do we have, or does the state, or do we have the ability to have private entities that can match families who have the capacity to meet children who are not LGBTQ? Do we allow that in our state?
You're talking about private
Private.
And the reason I'm asking is because such an organization such as the gentleman that just mentioned, I want to make sure that we have families who are willing and wanting to foster children have the ability to do that. And we can't, I think it's unfair for our state to say, you have to think this way, you have to act, and you have to support this. And I get it if we're trying to do it as a state, but if we do that as a state, then we have to allow different agencies to be able to meet the needs of their ability or their capacity to be able to meet those needs. So do we have the flexibility in our state to meet everybody's need as far as resource families go?
And to be clear, it's not about what people think. It's about people do and how they're going to raise these kids. And perhaps you're asking a broader question about the foster care system.
Yeah.
I would prefer an expert answer. Yeah. No,
I just want to make sure that we have, because I want to support your bill, because I want children with, that are LGBTQ to be met with families that want them and are willing to care for these children and their specific needs. But I also want to make sure that we have accommodations for families who haven't mastered that ability or haven't, it's not within their forte to have the ability to foster other children as well.
So, first of all, the set of standards.
I'm going to stop you right there. Just to want to make sure that your question got answered. If not, we're going to
referring it to her.
Okay, because I want to make sure that we can move on because I kind of feel like we're going back and forth with the same question. So can we take a pause? I'm going to move it to Senator Mehibar and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Is that okay? Senator Mehibar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important to know that you can't assign a kid may not have came out, right? So if a 10-year-old is placed and then a year later they come out as LGBTQ, what do you do then, right? If we're looking to set aside, we're going to put the straight kids with the straight family. Gender is on a spectrum. It could be straight right now, and then they'll figure out their true identity and come out. I mean, in LA, we saw that LGBTQ plus foster youth were ×2 more at risk, or reported ×2 that they received poor behavior or treatment by their foster parents compared to non-LGBTQ plus youth. That's a staggering number. And when you have 1 in 3 possibility of getting an LGBTQ plus kid in your home, that's when we have to reimagine how we approach and how we put foster youth into these homes. And to witnesses who are saying that we're further bottlenecking the amount of available foster homes, if you have 10 foster homes and 7 of those are not friendly for LGBTQ plus individuals, you don't have 10 foster homes. You have 3 foster homes. Those are the only options you have. So this at a time we're having the highest rates of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation amongst our queer kids. This is pressing and very much needed to ensure that we protect and invest into these foster youth, because then California is going to have to come back and then pay for services because they're going to fall into the homeless categories, because they also are disproportionately represented in our homeless population. And then we're going to have to figure out how to build even more housing, which we're already struggling with, and provide even more funding into our safety nets programs, which we're already struggling with. This is a preventative issue. This is an important issue. And kids' lives are literally on the line because they're committing suicide at rates that we've never seen before. So we have to, I would appreciate a little bit more time because my colleague got a little bit more time.
I will definitely give you more time. I just want to know, is there a question for the author?
No, this is a comment because I feel that the author who's presenting this needs some support. And as the only queer person on this dais, I want to make sure my voice is heard. So I think that where we're weighing right now are people's lives and people's comfort level. That's what we're weighing right now. And I think that's what I want my colleagues on this dais to remember. These are kids. This is a human life, because they will commit suicide if we don't place them in safe homes. That's it.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your comments. I want to bring it back to Senator Ochoa, make sure that you've got your technical questions answered, and then we can have our witness answer the technical questions.
I guess you were next about trying to answer the the question.
What I was going to say is that the criteria to become a foster parent or resource parent is the same across the board. It's the same for relatives or caregivers from the community, regardless of whether they come through the county, a county program or a private agency's program. But one thing I want you to know, we don't take this lightly. The ability to assess a family's ability to meet the needs of an LGBT youth is not taken lightly. And those of us that do those assessments with the caregivers spend a great deal of time when the family is hesitant or outwardly not able to do that. And they'll say that, you know, I'm not willing to do that. You'll have to remove the child. We work with them significantly to see if we can help move them along, see what's behind that, see if we can help them understand, see what resources and support would help. But sometimes we get to a place where we kind of hit a brick wall and there's nowhere else to go. And as the senator just said, we don't have 7 families, then we have 3, because we don't know which. The example I gave you was of a 4-year-old. We didn't know that little boy when he was 4 and placed with that lovely family was going to come out when he was 14. We didn't know that, but he did.
And I completely understand that. A lot of our LGBTQ foster youth, it's my understanding that they get kicked out of home because parents find out that they're LGBTQ and parents are not willing to work with that child, with their child actually. And I commend many religions right now who are actually coming out and talking to their people with regards to making sure that we love that child, because every child needs to be learned. Every child needs to be loved. But with regards to the children that come out who are LGBTQ and are kicked out of home and placed in homes, I want to make sure that those children are placed in homes that want that child, that really want to care for those children. But I also understand, and I think that's the point that I want to make on that end, that I think we need to make sure that they are placed in homes. I think no one knows what child is going to do when they're babies and when they're little, and it's something that it's probably easier to accommodate or to accommodate any child when they're little. But I think when we're older, when they're coming into the system knowing that they are matched with the right family that can meet their needs. And I just want to make sure that we have considerations for everyone who has the ability, because I really do believe that in this society, we're all different. I mean, it's America. We have different philosophical, ideological, spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs. And I think in a society where we want to make sure that children are cared for, we also have the capacity to accommodate families as much as we have the differences in families as we do with our children. And I just want to make sure that we take that in consideration. And I'm not sure whether or not your bill is actually going to do that on that end, or that we have a private system. Do we have a private system where families of
private agencies are held to the same standards that the counties and the state are?
So this would impact those private entities.
Mm-hmm. We're all held to the same set of standards and requirements.
That means that they would have to get the classes and accept the fact that and I cannot believe that we would have any foster parent forcing a child to do any type of conversions. That
happens frequently.
And that's when I would probably go in and say, we need to remove that child because it isn't within that space. But you made it, this is difficult. It shouldn't be difficult, but I want to make sure that we have different families with different capacities and our children with the different needs being matched correctly. And I'm not sure we're accommodating all of those families. Do you think we are, Senator Wiener? Because you know my heart.
I do know your heart. I also know that tragically there are families that destroy the lives of their LGBTQ kids. It pains me to say that. I'm lucky. I grew up in an incredibly loving family with amazing, amazing parents. I know plenty of people who were LGBTQ people who were kicked out of their homes, some of whom were homeless for periods of time because of hatred directed at them by their families, people who have not had contact with their family for 30 years. And those parents that did that, they have every right to have whatever opinion they want. They do not have the right to bring a kid into their house and make that kid homeless and destroy that kid's life. That's what this bill is about. They don't have a right to do that to anyone.
I agree. I agree on that point. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schoenberg. Senator Menkivar, any other questions or comments? Want to make sure I open the time for you? No? Okay. I'm going to just take a few minutes here, Senator Wiener. One, I have been listening to all the testimony, the questions, and one thing for sure, I have felt this in the most visceral part of my body. One, because I come from the foster care system, but also because I have fostered LGBTQ youth in the past, and for precisely the reasons that you mentioned, is that for whatever reason they have been ousted from their homes as young as age 13, and I've always made a space for them in my home. I've been mother to some, auntie to others, and was able to walk in that journey with them. I also consider myself a person of faith and understand that when it comes to kids, when it comes to loving thy neighbor, there is no sweeter love than to love a child and to help that child through the journey of whatever it is that they are battling with, whether it's gender identity or sexual orientation or just finding out who they are. So this bill for me not only acknowledges that we have love in all different forms, but that we as adults must take care of our children. And that's the soft point for me on any bill or legislation is how are the children doing? So for me, this hits home for me. And I, as I'm hearing the testimony today, I just can't wait to be a foster parent and check the box to send me LGBTQ children. I would be honored to do that. So I want to make sure that there's no other questions. I will call for a motion. Okay. All right. Moved by Senator Menkivar. Senator Wiener, would you like to close, please?
I think you've closed for me. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. So on behalf of Bunny, Angel, and Ladybug, Assistant, will you please call a roll?
File item 3, SB 407. The motion is due pass and re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Alvarado Gil.
Aye.
Alvarado Gil, aye. Ochoa Bogue.
I'm not voting.
Hurtado. Minjavar.
Aye.
Minjavar, aye. Wahab. 2-0 on call.
Okay. We have 2 ayes and no noes. We will put this on call and move forward. Thank you so much,
Thank
Senator
you,
Wiener.
Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues.